Welcome to Unit 8, Traits for Ideas and Organization in Writing. The first of which we're going to talk about is rhetoric, the art of expression used in an effective way to persuade somebody through the use of your language. You use that in order to better appreciate certain appeals. These include ethos, pathos, and logos, which we'll talk about momentarily. And it also helps us to become more effective persuaders. A classic example of this is from the Groundhog movie, which I highly encourage you to check out. Just do a YouTube search if you can't click this link for rhetoric used in Groundhog Day. If it sounds familiar, we're looking at formal diction, and this leads readers and listeners to believe something that's ethically or legally important, as opposed to emotional diction, which is sensationalism, leading the readers to recognize the ideas that you expressed as important, or even allusion, which can associate a new idea to something that's already respected. So an example of rhetoric in action would be if you're trying to persuade a student to get to class on time, you might say, "It's the policy of our school that students serve detention after 3 tardies." What makes this statement effective? And it's absolutely the use of rhetoric. Again, we're talking about ethos, pathos, and logos, which come from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. And he argued that these are the 3 basic ways to persuade an audience. The first is often common in politics or in the public sector. Persuasive appeals of one's character. This tells us that the person is reliable and competent. For example, "I am a father, a taxpayer, and I have served you as a senator for 20 years. I deserve your vote to continue my service." So you can see that this has a lot of character witnesses in court cases, so that perhaps the person has been persuaded as he's a former attorney at law and really served the public good. Or even medical experts who testify in court proceedings. Maybe their ethos, their character, is tantamount to what they're trying to say. Pathos, on the other hand, is an appeal to emotion. Of course, these emotions are evoked from the author's words, such as, "Imagine for a moment a tragic collision on the park's highway. A family is killed and many others are injured. The cause is determined to be frost heaves. We must use more state funds to pay for road improvements." So the P in pathos, you can, as an easy way to remember, could stand for pity or appealing to emotions. And this is also common in PETA commercials, where they use music and words so that you feel pity for animals and you're sympathetic to their needs. The next is logos, or an appeal to reason or rational thinking. For example, "Alaska's roads are in a state of disrepair. Without quality roads, our transportation system will falter and hinder our economy. Hence, we must use more state funds to pay for road repairs." So we're going to look at these rhetorical devices in action within writing. So we're going to look at a few examples starting here. These strategies can be used to make your writing, and your speaking more persuasive. The first is parallel structure. This is the repetition of grammatically similar words, phrases, clauses, etc., used to create a rhythm or balance within your writing or speech. And chiasmus is the inverted parallelism, or the opposite of that, meaning you must eat to live, not live to eat. So it stops the reader in their tracks to think about what it is that you're trying to convey. An example of parallel structure is, "You will get some sleep tonight. You will not eat too much right before the game, and you will do some warm-up exercises before the game." Rhetorical questions, on the other hand, are not actually answered by the writer because the answer is obvious. These are used in persuasion to encourage the reader to reflect on what the answer might be, such as, "How much longer must our people endure this injustice?" Or allusion techniques, which are short, informal references to famous persons, places, events, and stories. And this relies upon the reader or listener to be familiar with that reference. For example, "Thou shalt wash thy hands." The author is trusting that you're aware of the 10 Commandments and hence the subsequent statement. Analogies are comparisons between two things that are alike in certain respects, such as, "Pupils are more like oysters than sausages." The job of teaching is not to stuff them and then seal them up, but to help them reveal the riches within. Alliteration, on the other hand, is the repetition of initial sounds, such as, "Let us go forth to lead the land we love." This was one of John F. Kennedy's most famous speeches in his inauguration. This alliteration draws particular emphasis to that message at hand. Another is humor, and we use this sometimes with or without trying in order to win the reader or listener over. Hyperbole is the exaggeration for emphasis, such as, "At night she needs to paint a skyscraper to take off her makeup." Or sarcasm, "Obama doesn't have the experience of being Miss Wasilla." Or irony, "It's ironic that the window store had all of its windows broken by vandals." Or even an understatement, such as, "When you lose a leg, it stings a bit," in the famous series from Monty Python. Another consideration in writing when it comes to voice is active versus passive. And I think sometimes people say that you should never use passive voice, but that's not necessarily the case. The boy hit the ball, the subject of the sentence is obviously is active, as opposed to the ball was hit by the boy, which is passive, which does nothing in that particular context. So you need to have a rhyme and reason for why you use passive voice and not fall into the trap of just doing it accidentally. It's oftentimes commonplace in higher education with research projects. Here's why it's better rhetoric to use active voice for the most part. The fighter punched Ali and dodged the uppercut. That's active. Ali was punched by the fighter and then an uppercut was dodged by him. That's too wordy, too lengthy, and it takes away from the flow and overall structure of the piece. If we think about rhetorical devices all around us in public, we see metaphor, symbolism, emotionally loaded words all the time, particularly in advertisements, such as the most awe-inspiring display of artistry ever presented on the big screen. We've seen these things and they're written about every film, and you can always get some kind of critic to, praise your film, especially if there's a reciprocal relationship involved. And if we think about voice more so, we have to think about strong, juicy adjectives that can really spice up our language usage. So sometimes we say that the film was riveting, or it was pleasing to the eye, or it was thrilling, or it was a profound take of American history. These types of words are critical to really convey our intended messages at hand. Further, just as we describe the personalities of our friends, as readers, we can describe the personality of a piece of writing. So one person says, emphasize style, individuality, and originality. Those personal qualities should be revealed by the writer. And this goes back into the six trait rubrics that describe a writer's voice, like we were talking about before with ideas and organization. A voice, as we talked about those traits of good writing, and word choice and sentence fluency and conventions, and even presentation. So that's why they say the 6+1 traits of effective writing. So how can we help students to understand voice in particular as one of those traits of effective writing? I think we start with exemplifying strong voice by having them write about something that they like, or something that will grab their attention, or even an idea that they came across, or something that was recently discussed within a rubric or in a class context, or even something to hold their attention while you take attendance. Those sort of writing tasks make learning authentic and allows them to develop as proficient writers slowly but surely.